Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Twisted Outreach Project for Back Care and Scoliosis Second Fusion Forum, where we are sharing stories about the realities of living with scoliosis and fusion. I'm Martha Carter, the director of TOPS, as we call it. We're a nonprofit and charity based in British Columbia, Canada, and we offer online and in-person classes, workshops, retreats for back care, scoliosis, and fusion, which you can discover on our resource-filled website with an extensive blog about my own story and a lot of other information. You can actually sign up for our newsletter on the website, www.twistedoutreachproject.com. And you'll receive a monthly newsletter, which will keep you in touch about all the different events that we hold and also what other people in the scoliosis and fusion world are doing. So, as some of you know, we have been holding these online support groups for people with scoliosis and fusion for a few years now. But because of the private nature of these conversations, we don't record them. It's been clear to us, though, that the information that we share in these meetings and in these support groups is really important and really unique. And as much as we want to just keep it private, we also feel it's important to bring it out to the wider world. So we've started these forums to open up the discussion to the public and make it available on YouTube for future listening. So our first fusion forum occurred in December 24, and three people shared their fusion stories having their surgery as teenagers. And that's been traditionally the time that people do have their surgery. That forum is available for viewing on the YouTube channel. For the second forum, we have three people who will be sharing their stories of having their surgery later in life, which is a more recent option in the world of scoliosis surgery. And that's good because when I had my surgery when I was 14 years old in 1974, I was told that it was really urgent to do it as soon as possible to catch my growth spurt, to try to correct the curve before it gets too bad. There was a lot of pressure to make the decision. It had to get done as quickly as possible. My parents were freaking out. I didn't know what was happening at the time. And there was certainly no option at that time to wait and make the decision later in life. That was not even brought up as a conversation. Of course, in 1974, the surgery was relatively new, and it was a very cautious approach back then, requiring patients to stay in bed and not walk for many months. It was a long and arduous recovery, and perhaps they considered it too risky or too difficult for older patients. And possibly there was just also many fewer qualified surgeons. It was a new surgery, and they were probably afraid of not having a successful correction later in life when people were way past their growth spurt, right? So I'm not quite sure why they would have made the choice to only do teenagers at the time, but those are some guesses I have. There may have also been the consideration of that very long bed stay, and and adults generally have a lot more responsibilities than teenagers in terms of looking after families or having work. And if you're going to have a surgery older, you need somebody to help you look after all your responsibilities, and you also need someone to look after yourself. So I'm just guessing and making these proposals about why perhaps the surgery wasn't available older in the earlier years. Of course, there's very little information online about fusion surgery, which is exactly why we're doing these forums. Those are just some points that I thought about. Gratefully now, we can do the surgery later in life. The surgical technologies have advanced in so many ways. There's new types of hardware, there's better approaches to anesthesia, there's more efficient painkillers, and the long bed rest is no longer necessary. In fact, most people get up quickly within a few days of the surgery. They're walking and they can go home and they can get on with their life. We also have learned that we can manage the curves and twists with exercise. And so it makes sense to not just rush into surgery, but to give people options to try other things before having such a big invasion that changes your spine forever. So things like yoga for scoliosis, Pilates for scoliosis, the Schroth method, physiotherapy, all kinds of body work, massage, other healing techniques. They're very available and accessible in person and online now. And they can be really effective in keeping people strong, mobile, relatively pain-free. My personal favorite is a system called HANA Somatics or Essential Somatics. It's a technique that helps the body-mind uh, connections get reestablished, especially after a big trauma like a surgery. So that's great for after surgery, but it can also help people manage their curves and twists before surgery. So, thinking about that, if people can wait and decide to not do the surgery young, and knowing they have the decision later in life, or they have the option of the decision later in life, at least they can try many more things before deciding to do it. And that's definitely different than when I was younger. And I feel like it makes so much more sense that adults can do their own research, they can try these different techniques, they have their own agency, and they can weigh the pros and cons of surgery for themselves. And it helps that people are living longer. 70's the new 50, 80's the new 60. We have all kinds of examples of role models in the media who are still very vibrant in their 80's and beyond. I just saw Dick Van Dyke the other day on a program, and he's 99 and still dancing. And isn't that the goal, right? We want to keep our ease and our mobility our whole life, whether we have a severe curve or a small curve, whether we have pain or discomfort, whether we have surgery or not have surgery. We want to be able to keep moving. As the somatics founder, Thomas Hanna says, mobility is freedom. That's what we want. We want freedom in our bodies. We want freedom to move around throughout our entire life and to have the option of waiting through scoliosis for years, trying a lot of things, and then possibly doing surgery later if necessary, is what we're actually talking about more today. We have three wonderful people to share those fusion stories later in life with us, and let's get going with that. I'm now going to pass the baton on to Cindy Heidel, who is going to, here, let me spotlight you, Cindy. First of all, there she is. And she has a great story to share with us. So thanks so much for being here. And take it away, Cindy.
Okay, thank you, Martha, for having me here today because this has been a very lonely journey for me. Okay, first of all, I'm 67. I had the surgeries at 52, but I was diagnosed at 13. I lived in Baltimore at the time. Um, and I had a curve of 45 degrees when I was diagnosed. And both my parents came from like huge Catholic families, so neither of them graduated from high school. So they both worked, and they gave us a choice of bracing me or surgery. And I believe they chose bracing because there really was no way that me being in a bed for 6 months was going to take place in my house. So I wore the back brace. I also had braces, wireframe glasses. I looked like the poster child for US Steel. But I remember the whole process of getting fitted for the brace. My family didn't talk about anything. So it was kind of before mental health, I guess. Or maybe it was because we were, in a lower economic range. I don't know. But I remember going to get fitted for the brace and nobody said a word. And they put this thing around my neck and strung me up. And he started wrapping spool after spool of gauze around me. And I remember just tears running down my face, hitting the gauze, and it was getting tighter and tighter. And nobody said a word. And then when they took the electric saw out to, after it had hardened, I was practically faint because I wasn't breathing. And it was terrifying. And no one talked about it. So I was lucky that I was in an all-girls Catholic school, and I felt very protected there. Um, Getting the city transit buses to and from school, I didn't feel so protected. You know, we wore green uniforms, so all the public school kids called us grasshoppers already. But I was ridiculed and made fun of, you know, mostly by teenage boys. And I guess at that point in time, that's when I found alcohol and drugs. So I ended up out of the brace. The orthopedic doctor said, "Well, what are you going to do when you graduate?" I said, "I have no idea." He asked me what I'd like to do, so I ended up going to art school. And there, what happened was I was able to shed this feeling of being a freak. You know, I thought that I was, you know, definitely deformed, something was wrong with me. And the way that I dealt with that, you know, with the help of alcohol, I did a lot of half naked performance pieces and became an artist model. And by the end of college, I felt pretty like a normal person. You know, I felt like I had liberated myself from these feelings of being, you know, deformed. So I moved to Los Angeles. That's where I first started Iyengar yoga, and that was very just, it was exhilarating for me because I thought, you know, after being in the brace for so long, that you know, I couldn't do anything because I had this handicap thing about me. And when I learned Iyengar, I just loved it. And that's when I also learned about AA. So so my body and my soul was healing. At 50, menopause came, and that's when pain came. I'd never had pain ever before, and the pain came, and I kind of knew that it was coming. I mean, every day seemed a little harder to do my job. I had finally got to the like top of my career. I was the location manager on a film, and it was pre-production, and my back gave out. You know, and I'd always heard people say, "Oh, my back gave out." And like I thought, what does that mean? And I experienced it twice. It was just like I just collapsed and I couldn't hold myself up. And I'd fallen a couple of times. And I knew, you know, even though I had swore to myself, I am never, ever, ever having those surgeries. Um, I knew that's what was coming because I felt like my life was over at this point because I had to quit. In my just total loss of life, I quit my job, I left my husband, and I moved to Florida. Not really brilliant to do all those three things at once. And so I was only 52. And I got there and I couldn't even do like normal shop jobs, you know, like just working in a little boutique because just being anywhere and in one position for more than, you know, a couple hours, I would just be so exhausted because at that point, my curve had increased substantially. So I got on the phone, I called, I looked, first I researched all the scoliosis surgeons in my hometown of Baltimore that did do adult scoliosis surgery. So they gave me a date for 90 days later. And I remember it was a hot August morning. I got through the surgeries. They did two. They went in through my back the first surgery, which was 10 hours and 5 bags of blood. And then 5 days later, they went in through my front. They cut me like to the side of my navel down to my hairline and put in the cages. So they were able to reduce me to 23 degrees. You know, the very next day, they had me walking around. The pain was, you know, out of this world, but you do have morphine, but I still remember the pain. It was just unbelievable. But they didn't give me any kind of PT. I was used to being active and physically always doing something with my body, and all they kept saying was walk. And that's when I found transcendental meditation. And I ended up going and being trained, by a TM teacher on how to properly meditate. And I had read that experienced meditators feel less pain because they don't focus on it. And it is so true. And it did start to work for me. And I think maybe, I don't know, I can't remember the timeline, a couple of months or so after I was doing it, the pain just dissipated. In year 3, my first rod broke. That was not a pleasant experience. I was leaning over just to play with some dogs. And, you can only lean from your leg and hip joint. And I leaned over and it went snap, crackle, pop, just like Rice Krispies. And I froze. And then I started breathing. Thank God I learned that through the TM practice. And I slowly raised myself back up, and it hurt, but it wasn't like I couldn't walk. Nothing was sticking out of my body. And I'm like, what? I freaked out mentally. But then I finally calmed down. I think this was when I drank again. So I just kept going on, moving on, and it got better. I went back to the program, stopped drinking again. And then in year 4, the second rod broke. And I'm like, holy. So this time it wasn't letting up. It went on for months, and flew back to Baltimore and went to Hopkins again. And they did the full body x-ray, and they showed, you can see the break. I was still totally fused. So he said, just wait it out. That's when I, got back online looking for answers. And I found some Kaya yoga for scoliosis and back care in New York City. I'm like, oh, I'm back in my element. But then I went back to Florida, and there was nothing related to scoliosis or fusions at that point in time. And so I got in contact with Martha, and she gave a free Zoom consultation, and I sobbed the whole time. But what was amazing was, for again, like, there was someone who felt what I felt, who had experienced what I had experienced, and it was relief just having that there, because the doctors tell you nothing after surgery, because I don't think they even know. But maybe now it's different. But when I had mine in 2009, there wasn't any kind of help when it came to the mental state. And okay, so the first thing that Martha stressed was every day is different. And that what that allows me to do is not hold on to my pain. But my rods are not a problem for me now. She also taught that you can do yoga, but you have to do a sort of an amended type of yoga that they now call yoga for scoliosis. And props are like 100% my friend. But I also go to the gym. I only do 10-pound weights on the machines. I do some dumbbell stuff, but you just, You just don't know what's going to happen there. One day I did dumbbells, went home, went to sleep, woke up the next day and had the kind of pain that I had when my rods broke. So you just don't know. And that's the thing, is we're aging. So not only am I dealing with fusions at an older age in life, but when you age, everybody ages every day, and it's different every day. And so you just don't know what's going to be there when you wake up. But we can get through it because we have each other. I also realize that surgery doesn't like fix you. You still have to work this body. You know, this carcass that we're carrying around the spine has to be dealt with every day. And this, my last sentence is this being human is physical, mental, and spiritual. And it's our job to navigate what needs support at any given moment. And I'm just so grateful to you, Martha, and to Samankaya Yoga, and to TOPS and Twisted Outreach Project. You have opened up my soul, my heart. I'm gonna cry.
Thank you, Cindy. And thank you so much for sharing so many important details around the journey, because we each have our unique journey. Each person's spine is unique. Each person's surgery is unique. And as I talked about at the beginning, you know, having it as a teenager is quite different than having it as an adult when you're navigating work and everything else. So thanks so much for sharing that today. Yeah, thank you. Now we have Ada Gluestein with us today from Vancouver, BC. So great to have you with us, Ada. Please go ahead and now tell us what you've gone through having surgery later in life.
Thank you, Martha. And thanks, Cindy. Your story is so moving. Yes, I'm Ada, and I am older. I'm 82 years old, and I had my fusion in 2020 when I was 77 years old. So that's a lot older. My fusion is at L4, 5, and S1. So it's quite small, short compared to so many other people. I had a curve at the right, on my right lumbar spine. And I looked it up. It said 51 degrees. It was curving this way, like a backward C, and then trying to turn into an S curve, but was hitting the bottom of my spine, and nerves were getting pinched. And that was the reason for the fusion at that time. As for scoliosis, I had no idea that I had scoliosis. I certainly didn't as a younger person, and I don't know when it arrived as an adult growing older. But when I was in my 60s, I was at some rheumatologist who I was seeing about osteoporosis and my bone density. And he examined me and ran his fingers down my spine at the time. And he said to me, "Oh, you have scoliosis. So do I." And it was just in passing, as if I already knew. And that was how I found out in the first place. But I didn't really ever have a formal diagnosis given to me. And how I came to get to the surgery, I had back issues after I had my children, and I had gone to the chiropractor, and that had fixed my back issues, I thought. And then I started to get pain in my hip, my right hip, down my right leg, and eventually it went right down my leg into my foot, and over the years became excruciating pain for me. So it was really my pain history that led to everything. I had a really lovely doctor at the time, and she was happy to refer me to any specialist. And I seemed to go from pillar to post, trying to find out what was wrong with me. The first person that I went to told me to tighten my core and my pain would go away. Then I went to a different one who told me I had bursitis in my right hip, and he gave me cortisone shots, which did nothing for me. In fact, they added to the pain. And then I was told I had spinal stenosis. Another one told me I had facet joint difficulties, degenerative disc disease, osteoarthritis. They named off all these things over the years, and I was learning how to live with chronic pain, but it was becoming unbearable. I had been a teacher all my life, and in the last few years that I worked, I was working at Simon Fraser University with student teachers, and my job entailed work on campus, but I also had to go out to the schools to observe students in their practicum teaching. And of course, that entailed long hallways to walk and staircases up and down, up and down. It became so difficult for me, and I finally gave that up and retired at 59. I was on high-dose pain medications at that time, which had their own complications. And then eventually I was referred to St. Paul's Hospital here in Vancouver. And the doctor there started to have me be treated with nerve blocks at the L5 nerve root. Those were a godsend to me because they actually worked. And they worked for 6 years. So I wasn't pain-free, but I was pretty close to it for those 6 years. During that time, I got referred to the spine clinic in Vancouver, where they continued the blocks, and they gave x-rays. And the doctor there that I first saw was the first person who explained to me what was happening in my spine. And he showed me the x-rays, he showed me the scoliosis, where the curve was and what it was doing. And he told me to continue with the nerve blocks, and to that surgery should be my last resort. So that is what happened. Eventually, after the 6 years, the nerve blocks weren't working anymore. I had 2 or 3 in a row that didn't work, and it was time for the surgery. And so I went to a different specialist, to the surgeon at the spine clinic at that time. So the surgery itself was quite easy for me. I woke up very soon after the surgery. I was wide awake and wasn't in recovery very long. And then I was able to get up and walk the same day. And I noticed at the time that my right foot felt numbness like a bar across it. Well, at the time it felt like a lead weight. And I did ask about it, and they told me that maybe some nerves had been damaged, but they would regenerate and that would be fine. So I I thought that would be the case. So I was very, very disappointed, and I was very angry with him that he just didn't seem responsive. And I think I was angry at myself because I did ask ahead of time about, his success rate and things like that. But what he never did tell me that there were possibilities that things wouldn't work out as well as I had wanted. I did have pain relief, and I must say that the pain that I experienced was so much better from the surgery, and I'm very grateful for that. But I was left with mobility issues, and which I still have. And one of my favorite things to do had been dancing. I loved all kinds of dancing throughout my whole life. I had done, folk dancing and ballroom dancing and flamenco dancing. It was just something that was such a joy for me, and I no longer could do it. The other thing that had happened was that my waist was now shortened, and so my torso was getting compressed lower and lower, it felt like. And right now, my entire torso really is sitting inside my pelvis, and I've lost my waist that I had before. And that causes pain. It's certainly not like the pain I had, my original pain in my hip and leg, but I do have pain in my around where my waist should be, and in my back from that compression, I believe. So what has helped me? I guess all through that whole time, I also have been a meditator. And the kind of meditation I do is Vipassana meditation, which is insight meditation. And I've been to so many retreats, and I belong to a meditation group. I watch a lot of Dharma talks online, and I have found that to be extremely helpful for me. I discovered essential somatics, and I'm so grateful for that. And I do find our classes so helpful. I'm lengthening and strengthening, or trying to, in my waist, my sides. I go to a warm water pool twice a week, once to an exercise class, and the other to an I Chi class, which is Tai Chi in the water, which I really love and find so soothing. And it's so great to feel buoyant and not have pressure on me anywhere when I'm in the water there. I do I get massages when I can. Once a week I attend a seated international folk dancing, which isn't as great as dancing, but it's a good alternative, and I enjoy the music very much. I do writing, and I have written a lot about pain, living with pain, dialogues with pain. And I volunteer as a coach for Pain BC with people who live with chronic pain. And that's very rewarding to me, that, I feel I gain a lot as much as I'm helping other people, probably more so. And the thing that I think has helped me the most throughout my entire pain journey, and living with scoliosis and a fusion, is my mindset. That I at one time felt poor me, why me? Is this going to last forever? How am I ever going to live my life? I went through all of those things um, into realizing that I could live a fulfilling life with pain, with scoliosis, with having a fusion. And that has helped me, just that mindset has helped me in other areas of my life too, that, I now look at any problem as just one part of my life, and there's so much else out there. And that's what I find with pain in my body. It's in one place or down one leg, but I've got the whole other side that works, and there still is the whole world out there to enjoy. Um, yeah, so I'll stop there. Thank you, Martha, so much.
So inspiring to hear your story, just as it is with Cindy's as well. Just so touching. We all have our struggles, and then the ways that each person finds to cope and find solutions for yourself. Once again, because there isn't that much help from the surgeons, there's no official post-fusion protocol out there. We are discovering it as we go, each of us. So thank you so much for sharing what gets you through the day and what gets you through it all. And I love that chair folk dancing. Who knew? That's fantastic. And we have one more person to hear from, someone who's had their surgery very recently, which is kind of special. We have Mary here today. Thank you so much for being here, Mary. And I'm just going to let you tell us your story.
Okay, thank you, Martha, and thank you, Cindy and Ada. Yes, as Martha said, I just had my surgery in January, so I'm still recovering, but I'm doing very well so far. I was diagnosed in my 30s, and I think that I probably had scoliosis as an adolescent, but I wasn't diagnosed at that time. At the time I was diagnosed, I was very active. The doctor I saw said, "Oh, you need the surgery right away." I think my curve was about 40 degrees, something like that. And it just didn't feel right because had just started taking yoga. I was really active at work. I traveled a lot for work. I was on my feet, but I really enjoyed my job. So I did not get the surgery then, but I continued to take yoga. I bicycled. I started swimming, and I continued to walk quite a bit. And that really helped kind of put the pain off. And really the curve at that time, I didn't think it was really noticeable. From the front, you couldn't really see it, but from the back, you could. But over time, as I aged, and I went through menopause at 46, so that really made a change. That really increased the pain, increased the curvature. And then COVID didn't help either because we were also inactive. But over that time, I did see a woman for acupuncture, chiropractic work, and she's the one that really encouraged me to keep doing what I was doing, all the exercises and things. So I stayed with that. But as I said, as I aged, I was having a lot more pain. So I got the opinions of 2 additional doctors here in Chicago, and they both said, "You have to have the surgery right away." But it still didn't feel right because I could still touch my toes and walk and do yoga and swim. So I went up to the Mayo Clinic and I saw an orthopedic surgeon and a neurologist, and they both said, "We recommend that you not have the surgery right now." And they referred me to a surgeon here in Chicago. I went to see him and he agreed. In fact, at that time, he was doing a study with other hospitals around the country on scoliosis and fusion surgery in the efficacy of it in older people. And he said, "You don't even qualify for the study." So I just started going to see him once a year and getting the full x-rays of my spine. And he would always say, You're still balanced, even though the curve is getting worse. Your head is over shoulders, shoulders are over hips. And so it's really up to you how much pain you can live with. So I decided to just start continuing with the yoga. And then one of my yoga teachers at the studio I went to recommended yoga for scoliosis. So I started taking that, which I loved because everyone in the class had scoliosis. They were all really supportive. The teacher was great. But then during COVID, they went online with the classes. But toward the end of COVID shutdown, she moved out of state. So I was devastated. I thought, because there are not that many people who teach yoga for scoliosis, I thought. So she recommended Salamkaya outreach program in Martha Carter. And so I contacted Martha, I delayed, of course, and I joined the fusion support group to see what kind of information I could get. And when I heard some of the problems that people were having in middle age and a little older, when they had the surgery as adolescents, I thought, there's no way I'm having that surgery. Because, I heard people have numbness and tingling down their legs and back pain and pain where there isn't where they're not fused. And I asked the neurologist that I was going to about that. He said, oh, yes, those are all common side effects. And I thought, no way am I having that surgery. So he said, again, it's up to you if you can live with the pain. So at that time, I also went to the pain clinic at the same hospital where this doctor practices. And she tried cortisone shots and a low dose anesthesia. And the problem was by that time, I was having pain in so many different parts of my body, my back, my hips, down my leg, that she could only give me enough that would take care of one spot of the back at a time. So it didn't really work. So I just kept going. I just said, well, okay, I just have to deal with this. I had to stop riding my bike because that aggravated the back. But I kept swimming, kept doing yoga, kept walking. And then the walking got more and more difficult. So I went to the doctor this past June, my annual, full x-ray of the spine. And he said, he's a very matter-of-fact man, and he scooted up close to me, looked me straight in the eye and said, it's time for you to start seriously thinking about having this surgery. So I believed him. And I thought, well, I'm turning 75 in September. This was in June. I'm turning 75 in September. I better have the surgery soon because the older I get, the harder it's going to be to recover. So they scheduled me for surgery in January. They did it in 2 stages. First day they went in through the front, moved my organs aside, put in those spacers or cages. And then 3 days later, I had the full back and they fused me from T3 to my pelvis. And I was in the hospital, on that lovely morphine drip. And then oxycodone, which I just am terrified of. And then I was transferred to an inpatient rehabilitation hospital. And they had me working hard. I mean, in the hospital, they get you up, as everybody knows, they get you up like the day after the surgery, walking to the bathroom, sitting in a chair. And I just thought, these people are just mean to make me do this. But at the rehab center, I had 3 to 3.5 hours of therapy a day, divided between occupational and physical therapy. They were great, but they worked me hard. And in between my sessions, I just slept. So I don't have a lot of really clear memories of certainly being in the hospital. And then the rehab I remember more about. So they sent me home at the beginning of February, and I had a torso brace and I had a cervical collar, which I have now discarded at their direction. And I'm off the pain meds. And I do take extra strength Tylenol, sometimes during the day, but most often just at night so I can sleep. And I've gotten used to sleeping flat on my back with no pillow, which I never did before. I always slept on my side with tons of pillows propping me up and propping up my back, propping up my knees. So everyone I see, I'm going through that. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do that. And they all say, you are doing fabulous. It's only been 15 weeks today, 15 weeks. And I can walk around my house without the wonderful little rollator, this great little walker. But I still do it in the hallways because I have had some side issues, one of which is dizziness. And when I was talking to Martha, she said, well, I'm not surprised because your spine's in a different place, which makes perfect sense to me. And of course, no doctor has brought that up. But I have to say, the doctor I had, the surgeon, was very honest with me. He said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to straighten you at all. This surgery is to stabilize your back so it doesn't get any worse. Well, he was able to straighten me. To me, when I look at myself in the mirror, I look pretty straight. And I went from 4'11" before the surgery to 5'2.5" after. So it gained back almost all my original height. And he has a great team of nurse practitioners and other people who have been available to me and answer questions, and they respond right away, and they've been great. So I'm feeling pretty good. I mean, there have been days when I said, what in the world have I done? This is crazy. I'm not myself anymore. I can't do this. And I drop things. I can't pick them up, even with the tools they've given me. But I think that in the long run, it'll be a good decision. And I think I'm doing pretty well. I just have to be patient because I have until next January to really be healed. And I hope and pray that my rods don't break. Like Cindy and Martha and others. Yeah. So I think I've
Oh,
come.
wow. You are such an inspiration. Just 15 weeks out of that huge surgery. I mean, like I said, in my day, we weren't even standing at 15 weeks, right? It was like 6 months of lying around in striker frames and body casts and all kinds of stuff. So the fact that you got up and you're up and at it already and already doing your rehab is fantastic, super inspiring. And also the fact you gained all that height is
It's pretty exciting.
really,
Yeah.
really exciting. Yeah, yeah. So thank you, Mary, for sharing that. And it also sounds like you had a particularly attentive medical team,
Okay.
not just for the surgery, but leading up to it, with the doctor advising you along the way over the years, which of course, not everyone has the benefit of getting to the same doctor for years in a row, or a very responsive team. So that's I guess also a testament to all the research you did to find the right surgeon and to find the right help and to get all the different opinions, which is so important.
And I wanted to add one other thing that the doctor did
Mhm.
before the surgery is when I was still investigating and mulling it over, he said, why don't you talk to one of the patients that I did surgery on who had she's about your age and she had a similar surgery. So I talked to this woman over the phone, and it was 2 years post-op for her. So I got a lot of good information from her too.
Right. All the more reason to share information like what we're doing today, to find out you're not alone, to find out there are other people. And just the fact that the doctor or the nurse practitioner recommended that's fantastic, because not all of us have the benefit of meeting other people and having a chance to ask the questions. All the more reason to tap into places like Sanamkaya Yoga, the Twisted Outreach Project, or where you can actually get to know other people who've been through the different procedures and who have different solutions, different tricks to the trade of having scoliosis and fusion. So once again, thank you so much for being willing to tell us that story, and how brave of you to go through it. I think we're all a bit nervous about having any kind of procedure, any kind of surgery. And so yeah, it's a big decision, and having made it, I wish you the best of luck moving forward with
Thank
it.
you.
I look forward to seeing how things keep evolving and growing now as you go through your healing process.
Thank you. I hope to
Well,
start taking
thank you.
classes pretty soon, but got to be patient.
Yeah, get back into some yoga for scoliosis very, very gently, but also somatics is really such a
Yeah,
great thing
I think
right after the
I'll
surgery.
start with
Yeah.
the somatics. Yeah.
Yeah, let's start with that. Okay, good. Well, thank you. So great. I don't know if anybody has any particular questions for anyone. Is there anything that you would have done differently uh, now that you've had the surgery? Is there something that you wish you had done differently leading up to it? It sounds like Mary took all the steps, but maybe any thoughts, Ada or Cindy?
Yeah, I think I would have asked the surgeon ahead of time what could go wrong. You know, when he just, I think I worded my question to him incorrectly by asking him, you know, what was his success rate? And I didn't ask what could go wrong, because I think I would have been better prepared to accept what happened uh, following it. I had no idea that I was going to have all these side things occur that have changed my mobility. And I don't know whether I would have still decided to have the surgery or not, but I would have had more information to base my decision on. And I think that's important to have. So anyone else considering it, I think, needs to know and do their research and ask everything, you know, what might include that, what might happen. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, manage the expectations. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the thing with any kind of surgery, any kind of treatment that opens the body and changes it around. I mean, it's if you think about it too hard, why would anyone of us ever do it? And that's what makes the decision so tricky, because there's always going to be risks. However, the more preparation you can do, like you said, the more questions you can ask, um, the better. And also to find solutions for yourself, as you have done through your own pain management, through your own meditation, through your own body work, your water classes, as everybody has found their ways to manage their discomfort either before, during, and after the surgery. That is really the work right there, right? Like what Cindy was saying, it's up to each of us to find ways to help ourselves, because we're the only ones who know how we feel. And regardless of whether you ask all the questions or not, whether you do the surgery or not, we still have to rely on ourselves to find the solutions for ourselves. And that's what you've all demonstrated so well today, that there are solutions even in the hard times, even with the difficulties. So yeah, thank you. Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, great. Did you have something you wanted to say, Cindy? Here, I'll just get you here now. Yeah, let's
Yeah, so, I did look at the chat. Two different people, said that, asked about the rods breaking or, well, I have Cotrel-Dubousset rods. They are different than the Harrington rods because they actually have a representative from the company that makes the rods in the surgery room during the operation to advise on what curve to put in, because these rods are not totally straight. So when you look at my x-ray, you can see my rods have a bit of a bow to them. The only thing I can think of, because the doctor couldn't give me an answer, I said, why do they break, is the stress and tension of, you know, all the surrounding tissues and muscle memory and this big head, just the stress of it. I mean, that's all I can figure. And
we always talk about the curve pattern and the degree of the curve, but we have to remember that the scoliosis also twists backwards in the direction it's curving. So the torque of the vertebra, the power of the spine, which is holding us up in theory, when it's torquing, it's a very powerful torque. And when they try to correct that with a metal rod, in my personal opinion, I think it's the torque that is still inside the body, and that's how strong that torque is, because it can actually break stainless steel. So yeah, it's a real deal. It's a real thing that does happen, and people do sometimes need revision surgery. But it is interesting to me that the fusion is what ends up being the powerful kind of support system, and the hardware, if possible, can be removed, but it's not always possible with the more complex surgeries that they have now. So there's much more correction and success rates in the surgeries now, but they are more complex and it makes it that much harder to have rods removed.
I just wanted to say, I feel like there's more community available than at least certainly 20 or 30 years ago when I was trying to make this decision. There are more people who are aware of yoga for scoliosis classes and fusions, and I think that's good because we have resources that we didn't used to have, like this.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And, you know, as I said in the first Fusion Forum, the surgery's been happening since the 60s. And so there's just more and more and more of us out there, right? And the more people there are out there, the more the surgeons themselves and the public themselves are learning about our experiences as we age, because that's the trick, right? It's one thing to get it done as a teenager when you're quite resilient. But as we age, even if we had it done young, we have to handle aging with it and or handle getting it done older. So the more we can talk to each other and share our own experiences and solutions, the better. Our own experiences led us into wanting to learn how to help other people through classes and workshops, retreats, through different techniques like yoga or somatics or Pilates or etc. Because most of the yoga for scoliosis specialists don't have fusion because the yoga's worked for them. But those of us where it just becomes inevitable and we are required to have the surgery, then, you know, to be told to never do anything again, that doesn't make sense. Once again, we need our mobility. Mobility is freedom. So to find ways to recover, first of all, from the initial assault of the surgery, and then learn to move again with what we still have available to us. We can feel so rigid after the surgery. Our ribs can feel like they're fused. We get shallow in our breathing. It can be difficult to walk, all of these things that have been mentioned today. It's really, really important to just not let it become so that you're completely immobile. As Ada said, this part doesn't work, but the other parts can work, right? What mobility do you have? Can you learn to take the deep breaths, which of course meditation helps with? Can you learn how to find some mobility inside the stiff places? Because of course our flesh is still very, very soft and fluid. The rod and the fusion in the middle of us might feel very stiff, but the rest of us can find some mobility. So that's the goal here. And as far as I know, for the three speakers, you've all really done a great job of paying attention to yourselves and making the best of what you got. And I think that's really what we want to share the most today. So thank you all three of you for sharing. And I wish you all continued ease in your mobility. And thank you everybody else for joining in and listening to all of our stories. And feel free to email the Twisted Outreach Project anytime with questions. And we look forward to holding another fusion probably in the fall. So stay tuned for that. And have a good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining in.